Void ships within the Warhammer 40k universe are, as in most sci-fi universes, unimaginably powerful and important. Even when compared to the frankly ridiculous arsenal of advanced military technologies that the Imperium of Man has at its disposal, they are still the most powerful assets that can be controlled by a single branch of the Imperium. Not only is each ship a near indestructible mass of alloys capable of withstanding a level of punishment incomparable to anything that can be created by non-void weapons, and is capable of projecting enough firepower to scour a world clean, but as a collective, the Imperial fleet has arguably the most key role when considering the Imperium for what it is. The Imperium of Mankind is the collective political identity of countless systems, worlds, and stations. Though it has an incredibly wide range of different cultures and traditions, they are all shadowed by collective values of military expansion and domination of the galaxy by right of wholly manifest destiny. It must be bound together to be considered as one empire. It falls to the Imperial fleet to do this, to bring humanity together through trade of goods and culture, to ferry soldiers and supplies to far-flung campaigns at all corners of the galaxy, to defend the borders of the Imperium, and to prevent the taint of the Xenos or heretic from touching Imperial ground. The question I now pose is, why aren't void ships seen more in the wider 40k lore? Why are space battles so rarely seen in this spacefaring empire? And most of all, why don't these vessels turn their weapons planetside and reduce any form of enemy to atoms while barely touching their own ammo reserves? Of course, we both know the easy and the real answer. Warhammer 40k was, and still is, a tabletop wargame. The lore for all of the major factions has been built around the physical models you can buy and paint. As the battles take place on the planet's surface, so does the lore writing. The codices are filled with art and data on the infantry, tanks, monsters, and combinations thereof, and anything else that has been written in to add to the universe. The hobby has since grown massively, and recently, games and other forms of media have been released to expand upon the limited lore and information of void vessels, but they still fall behind when compared to their land-based counterparts. My point is that the Imperial Navy has become so powerful that any contribution from land-based counterparts is immaterial. I think this is best observed when one considers the sheer awe and reverence that Imperial Titans are given in the lore. These giant bipedal god machines are described as so incomprehensibly powerful that the mere sight of them can cause whole cities to surrender. I believe that the same awe would not be present if an Imperial cruiser were in high orbit above your world, even though it has significantly more offensive and defensive potential than any Imperial Titan. In fact, Titan weapons are often just scaled down versions of Navy Lancers, and without having to worry about gravity, a warship can have exponentially more armor. This large imbalance of power between the Imperial Navy and the other forms of military within the Imperium is so often overlooked that when situations arise in the lore when it is addressed, half-hearted excuses dripping in plot armor are conjured up by the writers. I don't blame the writers for this, and naval space warfare is always my favourite part of any book that has any, but I do sometimes feel underwhelmed when the Navy shows up to save the day at incredibly convenient times for the book's protagonists. It is this imbalance of power that I wish to address, and I do believe there are justifications we can make to appropriately limit the power of the Imperial Navy and give crowned forces more credibility. Fundamentally, we have to recognise that all of the ships that make up the Imperial fleet require an incredible amount of time, resources, and manpower to produce and maintain. Note that I say Imperial fleet and not the Imperial Navy. The Imperial fleet is all of the collected void-faring vessels that the Imperium controls, whereas the Imperial Navy refers only to the military ships. The other main part of the Imperial fleet is the merchant fleet, which makes up over 90% of all of the vessels the Imperium controls. All void-faring vessels, from the largest battleship to the humble escort ship, are incredibly resource-heavy. Even some of the smallest escort-class vessels require years of work in orbital docks, and their cost can be compared to the annual production quotas of an average-sized hive city. larger capital ships could take decades to construct, and an order of a single one of these gargantuan vessels will affect the supply and output of an entire subsector. In fact, battleships are often so difficult and expensive to produce that making a new one from scratch almost never happens, but instead, the Navy will wait patiently for a hulk to break real space. Let the Adeptus Mechanicus pry for tiny scraps of forgotten technology. As long as they can reverse engineer a long-lost battleship, the Navy will be more than satisfied. While the lives of guardsmen can be spent just as easily as ammunition, Navy vessels are not so easy to replace, and even the most brazen admirals will have to respect their ships if they wish to stay in their position. It is here that I make my first major assumption. While the Navy will expect losses, their doctrine must prioritise the survival and longevity of their vessels, perhaps even at the sacrifice of victory. You may be quick to dismiss this assumption. The Imperium of Man has always valued victory above all else, and even suggesting retreat will be met with a swift retribution from a commissar's bullet. While this attitude does extend to the Navy also, often the ship's captain is executed by the onboard commissar. A new commander will be assigned, keeping the vessel in the fight. I believe the Navy should make exceptions when the ship is in imminent danger, or if an express order is given by the fleet commander. Often in the law, captains will sacrifice precious battleships to achieve an exemplary goal, and while there are situations where I can see this would be necessary, the consequences of losing an expensive capital ship are not fully respected. If authors can establish the incredible cost of these vessels in the law, and have Imperial Navy doctrine consider this with all its decision-making, then these ships cannot be thrown into battle at every convenience, and therefore their power can be appropriately limited to specific situations. Another factor that could limit the Navy's power is orbital defences, mainly in the form of weapons platforms and forts in orbit around a planet, or large batteries on the planet's surface. While these systems exist in the lore, there is little detail on their capabilities, which is often just as powerful as is needed for the respective storyline to move at a dramatic pace. I'm of the belief that these weapon systems should be significantly more powerful than void ships relative to their cost, sacrificing mobility for increased range and power. I think that the capabilities of ground-to-orbit guns are best shown during the Siege of Vrax, where the Loyalists' first plan to retake the Armory World involved a mass assault from Imperial Navy and Astartes ships. These ships would have to get close to the planet to unleash their lethal payload onto the Citadel of Vrax, where the overwhelming force of Space Marines, supported by orbital strikes, would see the world retaken with one swift strike. However, this was Vrax they were attacking. While the army of heretics was little more than angry rabble, Vrax was one of the most fortified worlds in the Imperium. Its defences were numerous and of the highest quality. Its centrepiece, an array of 100 ground-to-orbit defence lasers, each capable of destroying even the largest Imperial vessels. These weapons were dug deep into the planet's surface and screened with layers of overlapping void shields, offering them far more protection than Navy vessels. These weapons were also powered by gigantic underground generators, giving them more range and potency than their void-faring counterparts. This defense array would be more than capable of destroying the combined fleet long before the Imperials could even retaliate, and as such, this initial mass assault plan was quietly revised. Although this mass assault plan would offer some thrilling media content of Space Marine action, I think many of you would agree that the Siege of Vrax as we know it is far more satisfying and appropriate for the setting, and we should recognise that it was possible because of the limitations of the Navy. Though the defences of Vrax are gloriously over the top, other planets in the Imperium would not need such thorough defences, and even a handful of these surface-to-orbit batteries would be enough to deter most reasonably sized fleets and offer ground forces an opportunity to shine. Overall, while there is a notable power imbalance between the Imperial Navy and its planet-based counterparts, generally it doesn't intrude too much on the many narratives in 40k. I hope that I have offered some justifications for this imbalance nonetheless.